Robert Downey Jr. was sitting quietly in a McDonald's in Los Angeles, enjoying a rare moment of calm. The sun was shining, the sky a perfect blue, and for once he wasn't surrounded by flashing cameras or demanding schedules. That peace was interrupted when a 5-year-old boy clutching a broken toy car slowly approached him. The boy leaned in and whispered something so softly that Robert had to bend closer just to hear. Whatever he said made Robert's face go pale. Without hesitation, he pulled out his phone and called 911. What followed next was something no one in the restaurant would ever forget. It had been a long day for Robert. He had just come from a charity event for underprivileged children, giving his time, energy, and warmth to a cause he deeply believed in. Feeling both fulfilled and tired, he decided to treat himself to something simple, a quick bite at McDonald's. He missed moments like these, ones away from the red carpets and movie sets. Inside, the restaurant buzzed with life, families chatting, kids laughing, and the unmistakable smell of fries and burgers filling the air. Dressed in a plain black t-shirt and sunglasses, Robert kept a low profile as he found a seat in a quiet corner. As he ate, something caught his attention. A young boy nearby kept glancing at him, clearly trying to build the courage to approach. The boy had messy blonde hair and wore a faded blue shirt. Clutched tightly in his arms was a broken toy car, like it was the most valuable thing in the world. Sitting next to him was a tall, sharply dressed man, likely his father. The man was cold, distant, and glued to his phone, occasionally shooting disapproving looks at the boy for even the smallest movements. The contrast between the two was hard to miss. Eventually, the boy couldn't wait any longer. With careful, nervous steps, he got down from his chair and slowly walked toward Robert, his little hands still gripping the toy. Robert noticed and gently set down his burger, giving the boy his full attention. When the child reached him, he leaned in and whispered something that instantly changed the atmosphere. Before Robert could respond, the man noticed the boy was gone. His sharp eyes locked onto Robert with a chilling intensity, and he rose slowly, adjusting his jacket as he began walking toward them. Robert stayed calm, but something in the man's expression sent a cold shiver down his spine. He had a gut feeling. This moment, this encounter was far bigger than it seemed. As laughter and conversation continued around them, Robert only focused on the boy standing before him, his tiny frame trembling with a mix of fear and hope. Whatever was going on, Robert knew one thing: he couldn't walk away. The little boy, Ethan, looked to Robert Downey Jr. as if he was the only safe presence in the world. Clutching his broken toy car like a lifeline, he briefly glanced over his shoulder at the man he had come from, Mr. Harris, who now watched them with sharp, cold eyes from across the restaurant. The intensity of Harris's stare made Ethan quickly look away, fear flickering across his face. Robert noticed the boy's unease and knelt down to his level, his voice calm and reassuring. "Ethan, it's okay. You can tell me what's going on." Ethan hesitated, nervously fidgeting with the hem of his shirt, glancing around to ensure no one else was listening. Then, barely above a whisper, he said, "I can't talk here. He'll get Mum." Robert felt his gut tighten. Whatever this child was dealing with, it was serious. He nodded gently, offering comfort. "You're safe now, Ethan." But before he could say more, Mr. Harris stood from his seat. He adjusted his suit with slow, deliberate movements and began walking toward them, his expression composed but tight with irritation. Robert rose to his feet and instinctively positioned himself between Ethan and Harris. The man forced a thin smile. "Sorry about this," he said, tone clipped. "Ethan can be overly curious. I hope he hasn't been bothering you." Robert didn't flinch. His years of experience had trained him to read people, and everything about Harris sent up red flags. With a calm but firm smile, Robert responded, "Not at all. He was just showing me his toy car. It looks broken. He must really love it." Harris narrowed his eyes slightly, then forced another polite reply. "Ah, yes. He's quite attached to it." He reached out his hand. "Come on, Ethan. It's time to go." But Ethan stepped back, quietly hiding behind Robert's leg. He said nothing, but the action spoke volumes. Harris's smile faltered as a sigh of irritation slipped out. "Look," he said with thinly veiled frustration, "I appreciate you keeping him entertained, but we've got places to be." He stepped forward to grab the boy, but Robert calmly placed a hand on his shoulder, stopping him in his tracks. "Plans can wait," Robert said coolly. "I think Ethan just needs a moment. He seemed eager to talk about his car. Maybe we can help him with that first." Just then, a waitress who had been watching from across the room approached with a tray. sensing the growing tension. "Is everything okay here?" she asked, glancing warily at Harris. Robert smiled and nodded. "All good. Could you bring Ethan a drink? He looks like he could use something." She agreed and gave Harris another cautious glance before walking away. As soon as she was out of sight, Robert discreetly pulled out his phone and began typing a quick message to a trusted emergency contact. He knew the situation was escalating. Harris noticed the movement and stepped closer. "I don't know what you think you're doing," he said, voice low and firm. "But this has gone far enough." He tried to keep his composure, but his eyes betrayed growing frustration. Robert kept a calm face, but his tone sharpened slightly. "I'm just helping a boy who clearly needs someone to listen. I'm sure you understand that." Ethan, still clutching his broken toy, finally spoke in a soft, trembling voice. "I don't want to go. Please, can I stay here?" The boy's plea hit like a punch. Harris froze for a moment, then looked at Robert, his eyes turning colder. "I suggest you don't meddle where you're not wanted," he said through gritted teeth. Robert didn't back down. He could feel the seriousness of the situation deep in his gut. Ethan was truly afraid, and any wrong step could put him in danger. Without a word, Robert pressed send. The message for help was on its way. Harris glared at him, their eyes locking in a silent but intense standoff. Robert knew this was far from over. The restaurant, once filled with casual chatter and laughter, now felt suffocating. The air was heavy. He looked down at Ethan, still holding tightly to that battered little car like it was his shield from the world. Kneeling again, Robert spoke softly. "You can talk to me, Ethan. I'm listening." Ethan looked around anxiously. Harris had returned to his table, but his stare hadn't wavered. Still fixed, still threatening. And Robert knew this was just the beginning. Ethan's small hand tightened around his broken toy car, his knuckles turning white as he stepped a little closer to Robert. Leaning in, his voice barely audible, he whispered, "He did something bad to my mum. Can you help?" Robert froze. Those few words, trembling with fear, were not just a plea, they were a cry from deep within. No hesitation remained. Whatever had happened, whatever danger this child had faced, Robert knew now wasn't the time for questions. It was time for action. He met Ethan's eyes and said with quiet conviction, "It's okay, I'll help, I promise." The boy nodded, though the fear in his eyes lingered. He cast a glance back at Harris, who was still watching them, and seemed to shrink as if terrified the man already knew what he'd just confessed. Harris stood abruptly, straightening his suit jacket. He began walking toward them, his face attempting civility, but cracking under the weight of mounting irritation. "Sorry to interrupt," he said tightly, "but Ethan and I were just leaving. Thanks for keeping him entertained." He reached out, intending to take Ethan's hand, but Robert stepped in between them. Calmly but firmly, he said, "He's still telling me about his toy car. I think he wants a few more minutes." Harris's eyes darkened. "That's very kind of you, but he's with me. We have an appointment." Robert didn't budge. "Kids need time to talk. I'm sure you understand that, right?" Harris paused, visibly losing patience. But with effort, he smoothed his expression. "Of course, but we don't have time to waste." He turned directly to Ethan, his tone sharper. "Let's go, Ethan. It's time to leave." Just then, the waitress appeared again. She placed what looked like a folded napkin on the table, but gave Robert a subtle look. When he picked it up, his eyes caught the handwritten note inside. "The police are on their way." Relief washed over him, but he knew things could still spiral. Looking to Ethan, Robert gave a small, reassuring smile, then turned back to Harris. "Why don't we all sit for a moment? It seems like Ethan just needs to breathe. Sometimes kids just want to be heard." Harris stared coldly, then slowly nodded and returned to the table, though his eyes never left them. He muttered into his phone, his agitation growing with every second. Robert could feel the tension sharpening in the air like a blade. Time was running out. Harris ended his call and stood again, his expression darker than before. "You have no idea what you're getting yourselves into," he muttered as he headed toward the door. Robert's eyes followed him. The next moments would be critical. One misstep could turn a dangerous situation deadly. Ethan clung to Robert's side, his toy car clutched tightly to his chest like armor. The restaurant's usual sounds of cutlery and conversation were now muffled beneath the weight of suspense. At the entrance, Harris paused and adjusted his jacket, not casually but with intention. Robert saw it in the way his eyes scanned the room, his posture too measured. Something was off. Harris reached into his inner pocket and pulled out his phone, tapping out a message before returning to his seat. The waitress appeared again, her voice barely a whisper. "The police are just a few minutes away." Robert gave her a subtle nod. His gaze locked on Harris, who now sat tensely, checking his phone again and again. Something in his demeanor had shifted. He was losing control, and he knew it. Harris projected an aura of calculated power. Every movement, every word felt like part of a performance. But when he noticed Robert still watching him, he finally spoke, his voice low and edged. "You seem very interested in our conversation, Mr. Downey." Robert's expression didn't change. He simply replied, "Ethan looked scared. I'm just trying to understand why." Harris let out a hollow laugh, devoid of humor. "Kids have active imaginations," he said. "They make things up." But Robert wasn't buying it, and Ethan's fearful silence only deepened his resolve. Harris's smirk deepened. "You, of all people, should understand," he said, gesturing toward Robert. "In your line of work, you deal with fiction every day. Maybe this," he motioned subtly toward Ethan, "is just another story." Robert didn't flinch. He crossed his arms, his tone cool, but edged with quiet certainty. "Maybe, but kids, they're more honest than adults. They say what they feel, even when they don't know the words for it." Harris leaned in, resting his elbows on the table. "Then why don't we let Ethan decide?" His voice dipped into something almost mocking. "Ethan, do you want to leave now, or stay and keep talking with our friend here?" The restaurant held its breath. Ethan glanced between the two men. Harris, tense and looming. Robert, calm but steady. He clutched the toy car tighter, holding it to his chest like a lifeline. And then, in a small, wavering voice, he whispered, "I want to stay here." For a flicker of a second, Harris's jaw tightened and his fists clenched. But he recovered fast, a forced smile stretching across his face. "Very well," he said, "but I do hope this won't take much longer." The waitress returned, this time placing a glass on the table and subtly sliding another folded note beneath it. Robert picked it up discreetly and read it. "They're 2 minutes away. Hold tight." Good, but they weren't out of the woods yet. Robert turned back to Ethan, gently steering the conversation. "You said your mum was hurt," he said softly. "Do you know where she is right now?" Ethan opened his mouth to answer, but the moment shattered as Harris slammed his hand on the table, not loud enough to cause a scene, but enough to turn heads. "That's enough questions, Downey," he snapped. "This is none of your business." Robert's expression didn't change. His voice stayed low, controlled, but his words landed like stone. "If she's hurt, then it's everyone's business, especially mine." Harris leaned forward again, eyes burning now. "I suggest you stop. You don't know who you're dealing with." Robert held his gaze. Quiet, measured, deadly calm. "Then let's talk about it civilly. Or you can wait here until the police arrive." That stopped Harris. His smirk flickered, his confidence wavered. And in that second of hesitation, Robert knew this man was losing control. Outside, 2 black and white cruisers pulled up to the curb. The doors of the McDonald's swung open as 2 officers entered, their steps brisk, their presence commanding. Inside, the tension snapped taut. The waitress, clearly anxious but composed, gave a subtle nod toward the table. Robert stood protectively by Ethan, the boy now clinging to his arm, trembling. Robert knelt quickly beside him, whispering, "It's okay now. They're here to help." Harris straightened, adjusting his jacket with the same performative arrogance he'd worn all along. But there was something else now, too. Panic, buried just beneath the surface. The taller officer, Ramirez, and his partner, Officer Vega, approached the table, eyes sharp and focused. Ramirez spoke first. "We received a call about a potential issue. Is everything all right here?" Harris smiled, practiced, hollow. "Everything's fine, officer. Just a misunderstanding. I'm here with my son, enjoying the day." Before they could respond, Robert stepped forward, still keeping Ethan close. "Officers, I think you should hear what the boy has to say." Ramirez's eyes shifted to Ethan. Vega crouched beside the boy, her tone soft and warm. "Hi there. I'm Officer Vega. Can you tell me your name?" Ethan hesitated. His eyes flicked to Robert, looking for safety, for approval. Robert gave him a nod and a small squeeze on the shoulder. Finally, the boy whispered, "Ethan, that's a strong name," Vega said gently. "Can you tell me what's going on? We're here to help." Ethan's gaze darted to Harris. The man's mask cracked. "Don't say anything, Ethan. We're leaving, now!" But Officer Ramirez stepped in, blocking his path. "I suggest you stay right where you are, sir. No one's going anywhere until we understand what's happening. The restaurant seemed to hold its breath again. Robert stood tall, unwavering, because in that moment, it was no longer about being a movie star or a good Samaritan. It was about standing up when it mattered most. The presence of the officers seemed to give Ethan a surge of courage. He looked up, eyes wide, but steadier now. His voice was small but clear. He hurt my mum, and he said no one can help us. Silence fell over the restaurant like a dropped curtain. The clink of silverware stopped. Conversations faded. All eyes turned toward the table. Robert dropped to one knee beside Ethan, his voice gentle. You did the right thing, buddy. I'm proud of you for telling the truth. Across the table, Harris snapped. His facade cracked, his voice rising. This is ridiculous. He's a child. He's making things up. My lawyer is going to have a field day with this. He moved to step past the officers, but Officer Ramirez blocked him with a firm hand to the chest. We're going to clear this up, sir. Stay where you are. Vega turned back to Ethan. Ethan, do you know where your mum is? Is she at home? Ethan nodded quickly. His expression shifted to worry. She can't get up. He said, no one would believe me. Robert gave his shoulder a soft squeeze. We believe you. You're not alone anymore. Harris let out a forced laugh. Dry, desperate. You're really going to take the word of a scared kid over a responsible adult? I won't stand for this. Ramirez stayed composed. Sir, we have enough to investigate. You'll need to come with us. Harris took a single step back. His voice dropped low, laced with fury. You have no idea who you're dealing with. He turned to leave, but Vega was quicker. She grabbed his arm. Ramirez moved to assist, and together they restrained him. The cuffs clicked into place. Are you resisting a police order? Vega asked coldly. Harris snarled under his breath. He's lying, as they led him away. Robert stood protectively beside Ethan, who looked shaken, but a bit lighter now, as if a weight had shifted. Robert leaned in gently. Do you want to show us where your mum is? We can go now, with the officers. Ethan nodded, his grip tightening on the broken toy car in one hand, Robert's hand in the other. He whispered, I just want her to be okay. That hit Robert square in the chest. He nodded once firmly and turned to the officers. Let's head to his house. There's more to do. The restaurant slowly returned to its quiet hum, though tension still clung to the air. Customers whispered behind half-eaten meals, watching the aftermath unfold. Some recorded, others simply stared. Inside, Robert stayed close to Ethan. The boy was still trembling, fingers wrapped tightly around his toy. Robert crouched again. Ethan, the police are going to help now, but if you want, you can tell me more about what happened. Ethan's eyes welled up. He yelled at her. Then she fell. She said she was okay, but I knew she wasn't. Robert felt the lump in his throat rise. The simplicity of the words didn't soften their weight. He stood and nodded to Ramirez, who returned inside after securing Harris in a squad car. He's afraid to go home, and he's scared for his mum. We need to move fast. Ramirez didn't hesitate. He pulled out a notepad. What's the address? Vega knelt by Ethan, her voice calm and soft. Ethan, can you show us where your house is? We'll make sure your mum is okay. Ethan hesitated, then looked at Robert. When Robert nodded, Ethan gave a small nod of his own. I can show you. But he always locks the door. I don't know how to get in. Robert placed a hand on his shoulder. Don't worry, we'll figure it out. Just then, a restaurant employee approached Vega with a backpack Harris had left behind in his rush. She brought it to the table. From the patrol car, Harris shouted, You're making a mistake! You don't have proof! I'm innocent! The officers ignored him. Vega helped Ethan and Robert into the back seat of the second cruiser. During the ride, Robert leaned in, trying to keep Ethan calm. You know, toy cars are easier to fix than most people think. Once all this is over, we'll see what we can do with yours, yeah? It worked. A tiny smile cracked Ethan's face. The first one. Do you think my mum is going to be okay? He asked quietly. Robert looked at him, eyes steady. We're going to do everything we can to make sure she is. I promise. As the cruiser turned the final corner toward Ethan's house, the mood inside the car shifted. Everyone felt it, the weight of what they might find. They were almost there. The street was eerily quiet when they arrived. No bird song, no distant voices, just the soft hum of the police cruiser slowing to a stop. The windows of the house were dark. Officer Vega immediately noticed the front door hanging slightly open. Ramirez hit the brakes. Stay here, he instructed Robert and Ethan, as he and Vega drew their weapons and stepped out. Robert turned to Ethan, his voice low and steady. "Stay close, all right? I'm not going to let anything happen to you." Outside, the officers approached with caution, the silence surrounding the house almost oppressive. Ramirez pushed the door open slowly, and what they found inside would change everything. The place was wrecked. Overturned furniture, broken picture frames, shattered glass, all signs of a violent struggle. Vega moved quickly, sweeping left, Ramirez to the right. And then they found her. Sarah, Ethan's mother, lay unconscious on the living room floor, a shallow cut on her forehead and barely breathing. But she was alive. Paramedics were called immediately. As they worked to stabilize her, Robert gently brought Ethan to the doorway, but stopped him before he could step inside. Some things a child didn't need to see. While Sarah was being treated, Vega and Ramirez inspected the small backpack Harris had left behind. Inside, they found something chilling, a notebook. Page after page of obsessive notes, tracking Sarah and Ethan's movements, entries about isolating her, and detailed plans to take Ethan out of state. It was the kind of evidence that sealed a case. Outside, Harris sat handcuffed in the back of a squad car, watching the flashing lights reflect off the windows, his face twisted in a dark, bitter scowl. He muttered threats through the glass, but no one listened. Robert wasn't focused on him. His attention was on Ethan, who now clung to his hand like a lifeline. "Will you stay?" Ethan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Robert looked down at him, offered a warm smile. "I'm not going anywhere, kid." The hospital was bathed in the soft light of dawn, a promise of a new beginning. Sarah lay in a quiet room, monitors beeping softly beside her, IV running slowly. Her face, though pale, showed something she hadn't felt in a long time: safety. Ethan sat beside her, small fingers gently wrapped around hers. Robert stood nearby, arms crossed, eyes watching over both of them. When the doctor finally entered with the update, it felt like the whole room exhaled at once. "She's going to be okay," he said. "No serious injuries. With rest, she'll fully recover." Ethan's shoulders dropped in relief. He looked up at Robert and smiled, a quiet, grateful smile that said more than words ever could. A few days later, Sarah was discharged from the hospital, still emotionally shaken, but ready to rebuild. Before leaving, she turned to Robert, tears in her eyes. "I don't know how to thank you. You saved our lives." Robert, ever humble, simply replied, "I just happened to be in the right place at the right time." The real hero is Ethan. He had the courage to speak up. Ethan held up his now repaired toy car, the one Robert had quietly arranged to have fixed. A small gesture, but a big reminder, even broken things can be made whole again. Inspired by what he'd witnessed, Robert didn't stop there. He partnered with a local organization supporting victims of domestic violence, offering funding, public awareness, and whatever else they needed. He also kept in touch with Sarah and Ethan, helping them find stable housing, therapy, and the sense of safety they'd been denied for too long. Months later, the local police hosted a small ceremony, a community event to honor acts of bravery. Ethan was there, standing tall in a neat shirt and nervous smile. He was presented with an award, Young Hero, for the courage to speak up and for saving his mother's life. After the ceremony, Ethan handed Robert a folded piece of paper, a drawing, crayon lines, bright colors, a boy and a man holding hands. Above them, in big block letters, "My Hero." Robert smiled and knelt to his level. "You were the hero, Ethan. Asking for help. That takes more courage than anything else in the world." If you found this story moving, there's more where that came from. Real stories of hope, compassion, and resilience. Stories that remind us we're not alone, even in the darkest moments. Click the screen now to explore more heartwarming journeys. Let these stories be a light when you need one most.